On today's episode of the She Speaks podcast, we have Elise Smith. Elise Antoinette Smith is from Detroit, Michigan, and has a research focus on the experiences of bodies that identify as fat. With an interdisciplinary focus, Smith uses photography, #visual activism, podcasting, spoken word poetry, and social media as a catalyst to center these narratives. As a doctoral student in the Urban Education Studies program at IUPUI, Smith dedicates her scholarship to creating celebratory spaces for marginalized identities that she holds using frameworks such as Black Feminist Thought, sense of belonging, intersectionality, and critical race theory. She aims to ensure the work and narratives around bigger bodies are included in academia while challenging the dominant ideologies around body image and acceptance. Smith centers her work within the sector of diversity, equity, and inclusion as she pulls from her experiences working with first-generation, low-income students, racial equity, and eradicating injustices for underrepresented populations. All right, powerhouses, let's welcome Elise Smith to the show. This is the #1 podcast for the woman who needs a touch of inspiration, who dreams of better for her communities, and for the woman who believes in working the plan until it works. It's time to unwind and unpack the myths and truths about Black women from personal experiences from Black women and from women of color. Silence has become our greatest violence. Comparison has been the thief of joy, and we perish from the lack of transparent conversation. Welcome to the She Speaks podcast, where she shares personal experiences to advance the knowledge of self, spirituality, and success with your host, Coach Tiaja A. Let's start talking. Hey, powerhouses. Welcome to another episode of the She Speaks podcast. I'm so excited to introduce to you all my homegirl from way back in the past when we just came out of undergrad and we was trying to serve the people. I'm just kidding, but I'm kind of not kidding. Let's bring it back a little bit. Elise and I met when we first worked for the Michigan College Access Network as college advisors. We were all selected from different universities in the state of Michigan. I represented Grand Valley and Elise represented Eastern Michigan University. Okay, yep, I remember correctly. And we were a part of MCAN's first and premier cohort to be scattered across different high schools to help high school students get everything they need to be college ready. So my background goes way, way back, but you all, I'm so excited to introduce to you Elise and her background and what she's actually taken as ammunition to take her life and her professional life forward. So Elise, go ahead, talk to us, tell us who you are, and tell us a little bit about your work.
Oh my God, I'm so nervous. No, I'm just joking. First, I just want to give a shout out to Tiaja for doing this work, creating this space. I think it's very important. And I'm very big on giving flowers when they can be smelled, not afterwards. So thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm always here to support. So to give you a little bit about me, who am I? I am Elise Antoinette Smith. I say that because you have to brand your name nowadays or somebody will take your stuff. But I am originally from Detroit, Michigan. As Tiaja said, I went to Eastern Michigan University, where I received my baccalaureate in healthcare administration. At that time, y'all, I thought I was going to open my own hospital, which in certain ways, a part of me regrets not doing that because I listened to the advice of someone who did not hold my identities as a Black woman. And because in that space, I told them I wanted to open a hospital for women of color that use modern and holistic medicine. They said, no, with all the mergers and acquisitions, that's not smart. However, what I recognized in that was I was already doing diversity work in some capacity anyway. So, you know, after graduating, I can't talk today clearly, but after graduating undergrad, I ended up going into the Michigan College Access Network, as you mentioned. After that, I knew within the first week, I needed to get a master's in education because I remember that was one of the first questions I kept asking Crystal, like, do I need a master's? Like, somebody tell me, do I need a master's? And I knew in that space because I had met so many people who had similar stories to myself, being first generation college students, you know, using college as your out from generational poverty. I said, I got to do something about it. So I ended up applying to a bunch of master's programs. got into a few, but what I ended up selecting was Indiana University. At the time, not knowing IU was so prominent in higher ed student affairs, I just, packed my bags, drove down to Bloomington, Indiana, which is about 5.5 hours from Detroit. And I started my master's career there, graduated, moved on, and everybody else left. And I stayed for a PhD program in urban education studies, where I have a minor in higher ed. After that, I'm a 4th-year doctoral student this year, so hopefully qualifying exams will take place in December. Yes. So listen, I'm trying to get like you, Miss Ma'am. I had to take a little break, a little bit. And then now I serve as the inaugural director of diversity, equity, inclusion for the Division of Student Affairs at IUPUI, which is in Indianapolis and a part of the Indiana University system. So the core schools are Bloomington as a flagship, IUPUI as another core school, and then we have regional campuses outside of that. So for anybody from Michigan listening, it's like almost like the University of Michigan, Dearborn kind of narrative in that kind of capacity. So I think that's enough about me. I do work around bigger bodies, fat people, share all that, but I guess you'll ask me all them deeper questions in a minute. So
you know what? Let's just talk about the Black girl magic that just came out of her mouth so effortlessly. Like, you said that so casual, like it's not a big deal. Okay, Elise, can we divulge our age really quick?
Yeah, we can. I don't care.
How young are you?
I'm 17.
Okay, how many times have you been 17?
This is my first time. No, I am 32. I'll be 33 in December.
Okay, so I say that because a lot of times, I know you remember being in our 20s.
Man.
And we felt like if we didn't do it now, it wasn't going to get done. Right?
Yeah.
So you said you took breaks, but really I have a lot of listeners that are either considering going back to school, they're either in school and they're questioning their abilities. Talk about like those pauses that you may have taken. I don't know if you did. I know I took breaks in between each degree, right? But talk about those pauses, talk about your work experience, or what kind of things opened your eyes to say, do I need a master's degree to go ahead and do the work that you're doing now? Because that's really important, right?
Right.
Okay.
I will tell this to anybody. People say, well, how do you manage it all? I have terrible work-life balance. I do. And I think that comes from the fact, one, just being transparent with y'all, growing up in a household where you saw women put others before them, including their spouses, right? And because of that, long term, watching that grow up, I see where they had resentment. And, they try to instill that with you and in you, but a lot of times they don't have the right language. So it doesn't come off as endearing. It almost comes off as demanding. So don't come in here with all them babies. Don't come in here and do this. You better do that. When I got older, I had to recognize that was their way of saying, please don't make the mistakes I did. But when you're a kid, you don't hear that. So I've always had this super overdrive focus to not end up like some of the women in my family because of the negative ways it was told to me. So yes. Because of that, shout out to them and their experiences, because I'm a big observer. I don't have to necessarily go through it to know I don't have to do it. I can stand back and be like, that shit don't look smart. So I'm not going to try that. But to your point, I say that to say, so, I graduated high school, transparency, with a 1.8 GPA, right?
Okay.
And for me to be where I am now, I was never supposed to get there. My father frequently reminded me I was going to be on drugs like my mother, failing to realize, sir, she wasn't smoking them drugs by herself. You was right there with her. So please stop acting like this glorified crackhead, like you was a part of the problem, sir. But nevertheless, shout out to us. As someone who, graduated with a 1.8 GPA, not knowing where my next step is, being very embarrassed to even start at a community college. It wasn't because I'm a class clown. It was literally because here I have these two older grandparents who don't know how to support me. They don't know what to do. They can only afford tutoring so much. Math was whooping my ass. I don't know what I did in math, but once they started adding square roots and parentheses and exponents, I said, this ain't for me. It's too many things happening up here. Would you like me to write a paper? So nevertheless, graduating high school, going to community college, being afraid to even tell people that. I remember I went to church one time and I literally lied about going to a community college in church. So I knew I was going to hell. But nevertheless, I was telling my friend, like, I'm stressed. I went up there. He said, what school are you at? At the time, my best friend was at Grand Valley State. And I wanted to be a Grand Valley State. She was like, just say that. And I was like, nah, I don't want to do that. She's like, just say this shit. So I say it, I lie in church, because again, at that time, community college wasn't pushed the way it is now, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm looking at all these people go out before me. So when I left my undergrad, I actually went into MCAM, but at the same time, I had enrolled in the MBA program at Wayne State. So I was still doing that because I just couldn't see myself taking a break and disconnecting. So technically I did, but then I left the MBA to go to my higher ed degree. And since then, the rest is kind of like history. So I went from higher ed, graduated with that degree. Now I'm in urban education studies for my PhD. My goal is by 2023, I don't care if that's May or December. I'm walking May though, because I'm not walking in no cold. But I'm not doing that, but then getting here. So I say all that to say, you know, the reason for going back or the reason for continuing has to be in your own timeline. For so long, when I watched everybody going off to the Howards and the Michigans, the Michigan State, Spelman, you know, these are some of the big schools that my predominantly Black high school was going off to. And here I'm talking about Oakland Community College. I felt ashamed. I felt like I would never get there. No shade to them at all. But those same people who low-key made other people feel small for not going to those bigger schools, they back at home doing what?
Nothing.
And I mean, I'm glad that you're a parent. I'm glad that you sell hookah bottles on Thursdays. I'm glad you're doing all of that great Detroit rooted stuff. But again, in those moments, you made so many people, including myself, feel small because of the lack of resources we didn't have. We didn't have the ability to buy the clothes. We didn't have the ability to go off to school. And we still celebrated y'all. But y'all made it seem like y'all was in this upper echelon. And now where did you take your 15 minutes of fame? Me, I've been stretching this 10 minutes of fame for about 4-5 years now, and I still ain't touched the top. So to those who want to go back, stop looking at everybody else's timeline. And that took me years to learn. Yeah. That took me years to learn, because it's a few people who used to low-key be haters and try to be mean to me. Like, you can't bully me, right? I'm a big chick. It's hard to bully a bigger girl, because if I get to swinging, there's going to be some problems. But nevertheless, I remember those bullying-like conversations, and now those same people jump in my DMs. Oh, I'm so inspired by you. I don't put them on blast. I be like, hey, thank you so much if I could ever help you. And I genuinely mean that, because God helped me when I wasn't at my best. So why would I sit up there and try to trade on people? So again, follow your own timeline. If you want to go back to school, do the research, ask the right people. But again, do it because you want to, not because you're trying to prove a point to the rest of the world.
I love that, because a lot of sometimes our haters are the fuel for us getting to that next level, but sometimes trying to keep up with the haters and what they have to say can become toxic. So for all my listeners that are really considering either going back to school, pausing school, or moving forward with school, really search yourself. And some people recommend getting a board of directors. That's really your council of people that you trust, that can listen to your heart, understand, or try to understand or empathize with your dreams to help push you to where you're trying to go. Because sometimes, like you said, Elise, earlier, when you wanted to create your own hospital for the specific target audience, right? Some people can't see, or God hasn't blessed them with that capacity to understand or to have vision that big. So sometimes, your vision, yourself, powerhouse, and I'm talking to you now, powerhouse, your vision can be so big that the people around you just don't have capacity for that. So bless them, pray for them that they have the same opportunity to have their vision or their ideas enlarged so they can put you in their network and y'all can have healthy conversations. But in the meantime, don't let that get to you. Keep pushing your way forward. Now, Elise, I know there's so much more to you that you haven't said already, but I want you to kind of talk about, because you have your own podcast, right? You mentioned that you was a big girl, and when you get to swinging, you swing hard, but child, you look good. This haircut is giving. The polka dots is giving. Y'all can't see the outfit that she has on, but Elise is an undercover fashionista and dresser, okay? She dresses the body that God blessed her with. So if you have ever been body insecure, this is who you need to plug into right now, because there's research to support why you're beautiful. There's shape. There's all kind of stuff. Okay. All kind of stuff, y'all. So Elise, go ahead and start telling us about your show that you have, some of the things that you've really done to kind of bring light to the conversation about our bodies and our privacy about how we manage this body.
Thank you for that. First things first, as T. Asia mentioned, she's a fashionista as well. I know y'all see it. Don't play. I like to say my style is spicy granny, and here's why. Because sometimes when we look at bigger bodies, a lot of liberation comes from taking off layers of clothing, right? I'm all for it. For me, I might give you a little peek here and there, but because of the household I grew up in, it's just a part of my characters now. So you'll catch me in a lot of polka dots, black, white stripe, and I do something sexy like let you see some cleavage or something like that. So I'm spicy granny when I dress, right? But I love a good outfit, especially now growing up I remember even bras used to be them little pointy torpedo booby bras.
Ooh, not the pointy titties.
The pointy titties. I was like, what is these PTs? Like, why I'm talking about, I'm poking kids in 4th grade, knocking them out with these bad
Oh,
boys.
no.
And my grandma told me, you look good and supported. I'm like, Grandma, go to hell. Lord, I pray she don't listen to this. But at the same time, you know, I think the industry, I thank God for the shift in clothing. You know what I'm saying? You know, everybody doesn't have to wear bodycon and everybody don't have to be in florals. Like, there's in between for that. But I'll be the first to let TH know, even on your show, is I took a hiatus from my podcast because I had to do more of the research side. What I was noticing is I was having some of those initial conversations. I won't say the first ever, because this is why I'm doing the work. We've had these conversations, but I was doing it on a public sphere, and I was noticing people were stealing from me. Like, my logo got stolen one time by somebody in Texas, and literally and this is how you know when you're true to your work, your community will speak for you. I woke up, there was people making statuses. People was like in their inbox cussing these people out. I'm like, yo, calm down. Like, thank you though, but calm down. Like, somebody started me a GoFundMe. Like, they were like, no, we got to get this trademark. We got to get this brand. Like, you've been doing this work. So that's why when you true to your work, the people will speak for you. That's one thing you will never have to worry about. So I say that to say, this year is the 5th year anniversary. So Fatness Fiction and Plus Size Magic on the public side, it's been doing its thing in academia, but on the public side, we'll be coming back out to wish yourself a happy 5th birthday. You know, we turned 5 out here. So the relaunch of the magazine, the relaunch of the podcast. So I've been working diligently to like release this brand new wave. So mark your calendar, September, I'm taking over from the 1st to the 30th. It's going down. So there are different people and things that I'm doing this summer that I'm like slowly trying to get through with that. But nevertheless, my brand is Fatness Fiction. The podcast is called Plus Size Magic Radio. And literally where this came from is one day I was in my master's program. My professor, it was right after the December break, was going around the classroom and asking people, if you were to do research or like get your doctoral degree, what would you do it? So, you know, you hear, you know, women and gender issues, you hear things about race, you hear all these different things. And I've always kind of, you know, been excited the fact that I always challenge the status quo. I've always done that. And literally, she was like, Elise, I research fat people and why y'all treat us like that. And I was like, where did that come from? And I was like, that was God. I said, let me go with it. Because it was something I know I always thought about, but I never did anything about it. So, you know, the initial reaction is, oh, you're not fat. Let me piss you off. I become a fat bitch very quickly. Okay. I've seen it happen too many times. So in that space, I thought about that and I start writing those down. So stuff comes to me. Like if you could see right now, I keep me some notebooks on deck because my thoughts have to go there. There's plenty more if I could share it. But I keep a notebook on deck because once I said that, like I never forget, like this chill ran through my body. And it wasn't a normal chill that you usually be like, cool. I was like, no, this means something. So I wrote it down. Literally, I left class and class ended at 3. I was in the library from because the library is like across the street, from 3:05 until 4:30 the next morning. And when I say, if I could show you the stack, I was writing my behind off. And I'm like, I could do this. I could connect it to healthcare. I could connect it to music. I started doing all this stuff. And then the next day, later that day, I got on Google and it was like, well, what's the name of the brand, right? And I couldn't think of anything. And literally, I got to type it and Fatness Fiction came to the point. So the reason why it's Fatness Fiction instead of Fatness Nonfiction is because there's already a literally automatic narrative that comes with being a bigger body, right? And so when I wanted people to see this name, I wanted them to go to the website, look it up, and think it was going to be just a bunch of fat people crying about being fat, right? But the whole brand itself is built to push against the name. I'm showing you every single thing that you think you're going to get. So my brand works against the name itself. And I knew that I had to continue this work because when I graduated with my master's, at this point, the work had only been like a little bit over a year old. And like I mentioned, I grew up low income. And my brother, he was literally a father figure to all of us, including my mother. And he doesn't have a lot to just be given away. Like Donovan is the type of person where, and shout out to him, where, you know, we look alike now since I come in here, but he is the type of person where he's not gonna necessarily do something and tell the world about it. Like, he'll sacrifice something but won't tell you. So I never forget, he came in for graduation. He kept asking me, he was like, what do you want for graduation? I was like, I just want y'all to be here. So, you know, he got this van at this time that's raggedy, and he put my whole family in it, drove down. It was 11 people in my 1-bedroom apartment on the 3rd floor, sleeping in the bed. I slept in a tub. 3 people was on the couch. My best friend and her son was on an air mattress in the kitchen. People was in the hallway. We rocked it out just to celebrate that graduation for that master's. And I never forget that morning. He was like, you sure you don't want to go to the mall, get you some Ray-Bans or something? I'm like, you being here is enough. Went to Black Grad, came back home before like our master ceremony. He opened this box, and it was literally my logo in a diamond necklace, right? I broke down. And at that point, that's when I knew. I said, you know, that's a hood moment, right? But I was like, you cannot give up on this brand. I said, it doesn't matter. So that's why y'all always see me in it. You know, I asked, I'm like, what did you sacrifice? Never know. I went to get it appraised, and this is not to brag, but appraised for $15,000. My brother ain't got 15. I don't even have $15,000, right? And that's why I'm like, you know, maybe I shouldn't tell people that, because they get to choking me in the hallway, like, and steal my little piece of jewelry. I'm gonna be hurt as hell. But I say that to say, if somebody, and that may not be big money to somebody else, but if somebody can make a $15,000 investment in your dream before you even can invest in your dream, in my opinion, my dog, I can't let that go. So I think back to the work because, one, growing up, I wasn't necessarily bullied in the way that we see on movies, like pushed on the ground and stuff like that. Where I saw me being bullied was, how am I being left out of conversations? All the girls was like, oh, the boys love me, they giving me hugs. And I'm kind of feeling like I'm getting homegirled a lot. What about the times when you go out in public and it's like, you only beautiful to the people you're not desired about? You know, I don't have no desirability to be with you, and it's not to be shady, but damn, I want me something fine too. Like, and here you is over here looking crazy. We both can't be crazy looking. Like, one of us got to save the children. So I think about all those different things. So Fatness Fiction led to me starting literally before COVID, a 3-year photo shoot tour where I drove my car to the point, damn car blow up almost, to different cities like Chicago, Atlanta, New York, Bloomington, Miami, where I've driven and taken these pictures and gathered people together to just say, the camera is always told it adds 10 pounds. But my favorite thing is when I flip that camera around and this smile shoots across their face. You know, I've interviewed people on the podcast where even a woman in the UK who's a big model over there, who was like, you know, photographers have told me I don't take pictures of fat people. I used to hear that so much in my beginning stages in 2017. Now, it's capitalistic game. You'll take a picture of anybody who's got to pay for it. Now you're not worried about if your pictures look good. You just looking like, I could charge this additional body $300-400, and I'm not even up there in that range. So I do this work because I want to use, you know, narratives to untell stories. So in my doctoral research, I use critical race theory, where I'm building the theory Fat Crit. So that will be hopefully published in the fall. Black Feminist Thought, sense of belonging and embodiment, and intersectionality. Looking at how do we look at these different bodies? How do we show up? I can't just show up as fat, Black, and female. I can't, you know what I'm saying? These are my identity. I can't be like, hey, today I'm Black, today I'm fat, today I'm woman. These follow me every single where. And because I have every historically excluded identity on the surface, then I throw in the fact that I'm low income. My mother was on drugs. I was raised in this space. I didn't, you know, all of those different things add to the narrative of who I am. But I stand before you as somebody who literally struggled, took every single identity they used against me, and I turned it into a PhD. Y'all can't tell me I ain't the shit. I'm humble. But when I think about it, I'm like, I took everything that y'all could have used against me and I turned it into an empire. What are you going to do about that? So hopefully that answered your question.
It does on so many levels. Like, y'all, I could almost cry, because to me, that is the epitome of what it means to be a powerhouse. The house that God gave us is our responsibility to watch over, take care of, and to walk in the authority that God gave us to do. That's where the power comes from, is knowing that God put this in you. Like, there is truthfully no mistakes. And sometimes the circumstances that we're born into are the epitome of bullcrap. There is no getting around, like, some of the circumstances that we've had to endure are just uncouth and uncomfortable, period. But sometimes, somehow, some way, if you can twist that lemon and figure out how to make you some lemon water or some lemonade, it could be the coolest thing you ever drank. And hearing you, Elise, like, break that down, like, as many years, I didn't realize it was 5 years ago, because that means I've been connected to you for 7 years, right? Mm. This mission has spoke to me in so many different ways, because the way we view fat is super fluid, because depending on the space that you're in, who you're around, okay, even if it's Black women all together, because, you know, we come very curvy in general, right? But even amongst us as Black women, we can be super toxic when it comes to the conversation about size and how we wear our identity when it comes to sizing, right? Because half of that conversation is still based off of European standards. So for my non-melanated sisters that are listening as well, the experience that you have with body image is just as important and just as impactful. So this work that Elise is talking about, I've seen her literally start from scratch. I remember when she was posting about getting in her car, where there was these odd women that I had never seen before that were just wearing her t-shirts, that were promoting her brand. Like, this is a real thing. So again, if you have a dream, or if you have a thought, comment, or anything like that about yourself, and you need somebody to plug into, go ahead and send us an email or connect with us, because this is how you can manifest everything that God gave you to do. This is why you are a powerhouse. This is why I say, y'all, find your passion. It doesn't have to look like mine. It doesn't have to look like Elise, but it's supposed to look like something, because you here listening to this show today. Okay, Elise. So we're in season 4 of the She Speaks podcast. Mm-hmm. And I really wanted to talk about I Speak Life, because when the year turned around, I realized that personally, I was speaking death or speaking negatively to myself about different things, right? Case in point, my weight. I've talked about that openly on the show, about kind of building the habit of working out, watching my water intake, all that good stuff, but losing the consistency. So when I let myself down, I would say some mildly aggressive stuff to myself, like, you know, just telling myself off. And then it manifested into other things. Like if I missed a deadline, or if I didn't keep my word to myself, it wasn't the constructive type of like, you got to do better, T. It was the, you look at you, you know, borderline condescending stuff. So I realized the people that I was around, they also talked about themselves like that. When they missed something, they didn't keep their word, or when they fell short, it was just this negative conversation. So I realized, what would it look like if I really transformed my conversation to match my faith? If I believe health to be in my body, I should be talking to myself more politely. I should be talking to my food, telling my food what I needed to do to my body, or telling my body how I needed to respond to stress, all of that stuff. So I knew I needed to take a pivot. And then when I thought about my podcast, it also needed to take a pivot. How do we as powerhouses speak life to ourselves? So I want you to kind of talk about a time, or even a space in either your professional, personal, or business life where you've had to catch yourself and change your conversation, or if you had to change your conversation about yourself.
Sure. I think a lot of times we avoid that conversation because if so long your identity has been built off of surviving your trauma, and that trauma begins to shift and move out of your life, it's like, well, who do I identify as anymore? You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So growing up in certain spaces, it was not a day that I can remember growing up where negativity didn't show up in a day. You know, either I woke up to hearing screaming or some kind of argument, you know, in some capacity. It wasn't until I literally had to leave that situation where I finally was like, oh, this is what peace feels like. I had to be totally by myself, but this is what peace feels like. The most recent thing I will speak about is where my career made a shift. So in March of 2021, I was a graduate assistant. I had been a graduate assistant for, at that time, probably 4.5, 5 years. And I was okay with that because I had come out of master's program, going into a PhD program, and, you know, living off of, 99 cents a month pretty much is difficult. But at the same time, it pushes you to this next limit of being able to develop yourself. So literally from March, April come, I get my offer letter to be an inaugural director of DEI for a school here at IUPUI, at IU. So, you know how you have a business school, public environmental fair, all of those. So I was in one of those schools. So, I'm like, finally, my first big girl job that fit the field I went to school for. Because, I had worked for the city of Southfield as a young adult, but this was finally that pivot and that move. So, I'm excited. I'm here. I recognize my role, but I didn't have a supervisor who necessarily supported where I was at, because I think it was just this sense of, you're intimidating. And I'm like, I'm here to help you. You know, in one of our interviews we had, I told her, I said, one of my biggest things I can do to help our team is I know all the DEI people here because I've been here from the beginning. And, you know, at that point in time, I thought things were cool. But as things moved on and the administration cabinet that she was sitting in was putting pressure to her, I started to see it being put on me by telling me, you're just an AD, you know, you don't come to these meetings. I'm like, well, your boss told me to come to this meeting, so who do I listen to? You or them? Because they could fire all of us, and you can only suggest me get fired. So, like, I'm not trying to be funny, but make this make sense. But, you know, to see, you know, another woman who looks like you in all of your identities, every single identity I have physically, that you kept pushing back. You're just an AD. Don't show up to this. Treat me like a child. And it's just like, we're supposed to be a team here. I started to speak very negative, like, man, I ain't supposed to be here. Like, God, free me from this space. Maybe I should have stayed a graduate assistant, you know, being the first one in this role, but now I can't even move and do these certain things. Fast forward, we get through a bunch of events, a couple months pass. We started to notice tension between her and administration. We trying to figure out, what does that mean? And it was either they were going to get rid of her or she was going to leave. In this moment, I still stayed humble, but I kept questioning myself. Like, should I be here? You know, I'm applying for other jobs, but I'm like, I can't even apply to this because what if I only got here because, you know, imposter syndrome? Maybe I'm the token. That's why they got me. And then they, to be honest, they fired her ass. They fired her right before Christmas. Okay. You got fired before Christmas. That ain't cool. So I was like, oh, God, when I said release me, I meant me, not her. Like, I wasn't praying for her downfall. Like, I had been applying to jobs, doing interview, and none of it will work out. Like, one job I applied for, they told me no, turned around the next day, said that was an accident, interviewed me again, and still told me no. I said, so what? What is it? So at this point now, I'm like, I can't be here, God, because I said, it's not even the job. This is a toxic environment. And I'm not understanding why. So every single day, you know, come home, drained, doubting myself. So we start the semester back up, and my dean comes to me and says, hey, at this point, it's only you left. Can you like step up to the plate? What will happen is at the end of January, we'll have a conversation. January came and left 4-5 times, and it wasn't until April of this year, right? So I'm doing all of this stuff across 2 campuses that are an hour away from each other. So I'm doing work here, I'm doing work there. I had to pick up more students. Like, you know what I'm saying? My job is now, but I ain't getting no pay increase. The person before me was making $80,000. I'm barely making 40. So, you know, here's what this comes on. So every month I stay diligent. I'm like, God, it's something you want me to do. It's something that's supposed to come out of here. What am I learning? And what I really can say is God was preparing me for me to walk into an inaugural director position. It didn't take me to 5, 10, 15 years in a negative talk that my professors was telling me, oh, you'll never get to that until another 5, 10 years. Okay. So when I looked up and I went from January to April with it, I got my offer letter the day of my 1-year anniversary at this job, right? Them 4 months prepared me in ways that it could have took me years to get that done. Like, when I tell you years, T-Asia, I was like, I learned things about budgeting, management, stuff that I knew, but it was a hyper job because I'm at 2 different campuses. One is more of an urban community. One is more of the flagship. I knew how to navigate both of those because I had been educated and working at them simultaneously for the last 4.5 years. All God needed me to do was get the proof. My deans and them spoke so highly to me that when I got the offer from my current position, they called my new director, who was the vice chancellor of student affairs, and said, we can't have her leave right now. Is it possible we can change her start date? Pissed me off, but change her start date because it's so much work that she has been doing that if she leaves right now, like, is there anything we can do? They tried to retain me. Even though they tried to give me a salary, they didn't think I know it was $20,000 less than the previous director. They fought to retain. I ain't never had nobody want to retain me in no job. But what that was a reminder. All that negative talk that I said to myself, all those times that I said, you're not ready for this position. All this time when I was like, oh, I'm going to be 40 when I become a director. All them people who was advisors and coordinators, shout out to y'all, who limited my dreams. God was like, man, stop listening to that. I got you. Go through these 4 months. If you could stay down these 4 months, I'm going to increase your salary. My salary went up more than $35,000. So for me, I'm still getting paid pennies in my opinion, but I ain't never seen, nobody in my family has ever made this much money. And here's the crazy thing about it all. The positions I have held are looking for people with PhDs. I'm in a program. I ain't got the degree. So imagine what I'm going to do when I'm done with it. So all that negative talk that I was telling myself, yo, this brand is stupid. Don't do this work. People are, you know, you got people like, you know, shout out to Lizzo, but if I had a little more faith, there wouldn't have been a Lizzo because I would have been in that spot already, right? But again, sis, let's collaborate. I ain't no hater. Look, get on the podcast. Shout out to me. But again, I say this to say that negative trope that I talk to myself every single day literally was God saying, are you finally going to be quiet and listen? Are you going to have the faith that you said you had in me? Because literally when people say your life can turn around in a blink of an eye, 4 months seemed like a long time. But when my professors was telling me back in 2016 it was going to take me 10 years, and I went from a GA to inaugural AD to inaugural director in less than a year, man, y'all better stop playing with my guy. And I got to stop playing with him too. So yeah, don't talk negative to yourself. It'll turn around. You got to stay down though. Mm-hmm.
Woo, powerhouses, y'all. I am tearing up.
Please don't.
I don't mean to yell at y'all, but this to me is what it means to have a faith walk, because the journey of going from point A and having hope, but that hope not manifesting at a time that you write down, because some of us are wise enough to write our dreams and our goals down. Like Elise pointed out, she has 16 different journals in her office. Okay. She found the immediate 4. All right. Some of us have one journal. We might just have our notepad on our phone. Some of us might be using Google Docs, but to take that journey, Elise said in 2016, those professors, those are people of esteemed positions. There are some people in your lives, powerhouses, that are supposed to be your leaders, that are supposed to be your guides. They could be teachers, coaches, people, whoever that you put as at a higher level of respect, that just will not speak to where you're supposed to go. And it's so hard to keep the faith, because here we are in 2022. That's almost 8 years later. God is still doing exceedingly and abundantly above all she asked or thought. Okay. We have a God that does a sudden change. So if you haven't read your Bible, I invite you to open that thing up. It's a little word in there. It's a word for everybody. It'll keep you encouraged and it'll give you some nourishment. But you all, this is why I wanted to bring on different voices this season, because what it means to speak life to me might look different to you. And it looked different for Elise. Like I said, our paths crossed the 2015-2016 school year. We had just finished our bachelor's degree, and here we are now, both in PhD programs, both attacking different types of issues that affect the same population, right? There is no one answer to be a servant. There is no one way to be a servant. When God gives you a vision or gives you something to do, put some gas in your tank and go do it. Please go do it, because it's going to change somebody's life. And Elise doesn't realize it, but her picking up that camera, her starting that podcast, and opening up the door for conversation about body image was a blessing to me. And that's why I remember it, because it touched me, not in a way that might be loud as some people would do. You know, sometimes we wear t-shirts or we become like live fans, like we turn into the Beehive. But the start of the conversation was my hope manifested that maybe I was a part of a generation that could affect change. So Elise, how you said, I want to give you your flowers while you still here, baby. Here are some yellow steamed tea roses, stemmed tea roses, just for you and your brand. Because this is that. I appreciate it and I love it. Y'all, I'm tearing up. So if you hear my voice not cracking, that's how you know I'm a real one.
Okay, she got me over his goosebumps and all this. And I know she said put some gas in your tank, and gas is high, but do it, okay?
Yes. Find somebody. Y'all, somebody will believe in your dream. If you believe in your dream, I have gone with missing nails, with unkept hair. You know, I haven't had the best clothes. I just didn't post myself on social media because there's a brand to protect, an image to keep. But sometimes it's okay to go without the glitz and the glam to keep the mission alive. So even if you have to go without because you have an assignment, baby, put that gas in the tank. Go work at that factory. Go work at McDonald's. Pick up that third shift job. Get that second nannying job for the summer and put the money in the bank to fuel your dreams, because it's yours. And you will not feel right when you don't put the energy behind it, because it's yours. You know what I'm saying? Just like your name is your name, so is your vision and so is your dream. So, Elise, it's been awesome talking to you. We're going to get into this hot fire round because you have blessed me completely. So tell us, what is a routine you live by?
Every single morning I get up, I thank God for another day. I do. Before I roll over, I try before I roll over, check the phone, do all that. My body naturally wakes up at 5:30. I don't know why. It's been doing that since undergrad.
Spicy granny.
It's a spicy granny, man. I would get up and it'd be like especially I go to the market on Saturdays at 6:00 intentionally. So I'm out there with all the old school, we bumping shoulders, like, what's up, what's up? By the time I leave the market, get home, put my stuff up, and get ready to have my morning mimosa, it's only 8:15. I'm like, goodness, the day is gone. And people are like, we just waking up. I'm like, girl, I've been up, okay? But that's not saying for everybody. But I wake up, I thank God for another day. I pray for I literally say, thank you, God. And I go down my family list. I go down my friend list. I thank them for my colleagues, even the ones who problematic, people I have met, people all over the world. I just ask for covering because even though I won't sit up here and say I'm the most religious person in the world, my spirituality, I know what God has got me through, right? So at the end of the day, I would never, I'll publicly say it. I say it, and when I'm doing my work, like, God guided me. I can't tell you what to believe, but I'm gonna let you know, if you inspired by me, man, try a little bit of Jesus. And if you don't like it, that's on you. So I would say I wake up and do that, besides taking a little pee and shower. And outside of that, the next thing I do is I think about, what is the purpose of today, right? And sometimes you won't fulfill that entire purpose. So don't get up and be like, today I'm gonna build a house. You ain't even got a lot to put the house on just yet. Let's start off with that. So I think about, what does that look like? And then before I go to bed, I pray again, and I kind of just think about, what did I go through today? What was my ups and my downs? I don't know, like you said, 30 did something click. Grad school made me very emotional because I used to be like, I could hold my emotions in, but I wouldn't share them. So being able to pray, reflect, and just think about what you have and how far you've gotten, that's something I do every single day, even if it's not even intentional. That just happens for me. And then also put on your good playlist. I have to have music in the morning when I get ready. It depends on the spirit and the mood I'm in. It could be Kirk Franklin stuff, or it could be, Chief Keef and them shooting up some stuff. Depends. It depends on the mood that I'm trying to have. But at the end of the day, I thank God through all of the ratchetness too. I'll be like, bang, bang, Jesus, and he gets it, There you go.
I love it. Name someone you look up to and why. It can only be one person.
I know, right? But this is probably not an answer a lot of people have heard. I feel like some people may have done it. The biggest person I look up to is the woman I was yesterday. That's just something I do for me. And when I say that, people are like, oh, that's self-centered. And it's like, no, because I'm a loner and I'm always by myself. And people think that means being sad. I have my sad moments. But the reason why I look up to the woman of yesterday is because she, again, sets a benchmark for me. How do I challenge that? How do I get to the next level? And it's like, I'm only here to compete with myself because, again, everybody is not going to see your vision. But when you are 100% tapped into who you are and you're willing to grow and change and be optimistic, that is the person that you have to continue to remind yourself of, how do I get to the next day? Because a few of the people who I was behind, so a few of me ago has been accepted to conferences, got into school, got into these different spaces. So I look up to her because each and every time she tells me, you can continue to do it. And I remind myself of that. So this is an answer when I tell some people, sometimes they get it, some people don't, but I literally look up to my yesterday. Because, again, that's my biggest competition. And it doesn't mean I don't care about people around me. I'm a big listener. I will absorb. If you can see my bookshelves between here and home, it's on that side. But I'm willing to listen to other narratives. But at the end of the day, when it's me who have to sit with that, when, I get sick or when I take that last breath, the only person I'm taking up out of here is me. A lot of people will care about that person, but at the same time, sometimes people only see you for the outside. They don't know what that internal thing looks like. So because of that, I try not to attach myself to those people. Now, when you think about people who've done stuff in the world, great people in the world, Michelle Obama, Beyonce. But for me personally, is who was that young girl yesterday that's still trying to evolve? So that's the one I look up to.
I love it. Black girlhood all day. All day. All right. So tell us, how can we connect with you?
You can connect with me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'm not really too much of a Twitter. I throw a tweet or two out there every once in a while. It's Fatness Fiction, FATNESSFICTION, or at Plus Size Magic. That is on Instagram only. So plus size and then the word magic. And then if you want to connect with me personally, you can follow me Sugar Cubes, SHUGGARCUBES, or send me an email at info@fatnessfiction.com. And I am very big to talk, communicate, even if you just want to be like, do I look good, sis? Yeah, you look good. If it look a little crooked, I'd be like, fix that a little bit. I'm a real one. I can keep it real without hurting no feelings. So yeah, that's how you can connect with me.
Thank you so much, Elise, for coming on to the podcast for today's episode. Powerhouses, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Everything has been everything. I absolutely have adored this conversation. Y'all, keep family first, keep God first, but most importantly, remember who God called you to be, okay? And speak life to yourself. I'll talk to you later, Powerhouses. Have a question, thought, or comment? Send it to inquiry@thepassionatepowerhouse.com. Who knows? I might even read it on the show. Matter of fact, let's see how much of this you can do. Take 2 seconds to like and subscribe to the podcast so you'll never miss a powerful conversation. Be sure to join the email list for upcoming episodes and new releases. See you next time, Powerhouse, and remember, forever a student, forever becoming, and forever grateful. And just a friendly reminder, the content and ideas are owned by the company, The Passionate Powerhouse, so don't steal and be inspired.